turn to Hebrews, the 11th chapter. And this is where we're going to look at tonight. Hebrews, the 11th chapter. This is known as the faith chapter, or the Hall of Fame of the Faithful. And very familiar verses here in this chapter. Paul is writing, and he writes about the heroes of faith. And I want to point out from the very beginning that these people in this chapter that we know as heroes, they were not perfect people. If you, as we go through this, and I don't know how far we'll get tonight, but as you go through this, you'll see some that are mentioned here in this chapter as heroes of faith, and by faith they did things, and they failed God miserably. Yet the Lord spoke through Paul to mention these as and to talk about the things that they did. And it wasn't just what they did, but it was because of the faith they had in an unfailing God. Verse 1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." We talk about faith a lot, and there's so many scriptures in the Bible that talk about having faith to believe in God, and I'm going to drop down to verse 6, and we'll come back and pick up again. But verse 6 says, when talking about faith, he says, "Without faith it's impossible to please him," or to please God. "For he that cometh to God must believe that he is." He that cometh to God must believe that he is God, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Before you can come to God, you've got to have faith to believe that he is the God, not just a God. He is the God. He is Jehovah God. He is the Creator. You have to believe that before you can ever come to him. And without faith, it's impossible to please him. Now, what is faith? As we look here, Paul is seeming to saying faith is not something you can hold in your hand. You know, I don't need faith to believe that I've got oil in my hand in this bottle, because right here it is. I'm holding it. I can see it. I can feel it. I know what it is. So I don't need faith. This has nothing to do with faith. So you don't need faith for something that you already possess. Paul says it's the substance of things hoped for. The Greek word that was translated to substance means confidence or assurance. So faith is the confidence and the assurance of those things we're praying and hoping for. When I have faith in God for whatever it is, and just using this, if I didn't have water and I was needing water and I was praying for it and there was none, it would be, I just believe that God is going to provide me some water. And the people of children of Israel, they did that before. I mean, Moses, there was no water, and he came to God and he said, "Get it out of the rock," or wherever it was. God provided it. But so it's the substance, it's the confidence and the assurance that what I ask God for is going to happen. Faith is the confidence and the assurance of those things we're praying and hoping for. Faith is also the evidence of things not seen. Faith is not in what you can see. I've got faith to believe that the sun's shining. Well, I can see that the sun is shining. So that's not really faith. Now, I guess you could say if Brother Cecil's going fishing Friday night, nothing don't happen. So he can have faith if it starts raining all day Friday that he's going to quit raining before he gets there, I guess, and if he's really got faith, he's going to go ahead and hook that boat up in the rain. He's going to go ahead and head to the lake in the rain, and if he's been praying and believing it's really going to happen, he gets down there and that boat touches that water, he's expecting it to quit raining. Now, it's hard to have that kind of faith. But that's what he said. It's not in what you can see, but it's the proof of the unseen things. Verse 2, he says, or verse 1, so faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it, speaking of faith, the elders obtained a good report. These heroes of faith that we're going to look at here, they took God at his word. If he said something, they just believed it. They responded to his call with full and complete trust. I've heard missionaries speak about miracles and things that happen in foreign lands, and people have asked them, why is it that it's seemingly that the Lord does greater miracles, in foreign lands than he does here at home? And they say, because when you tell them that God is a healer, they believe it. You tell them they can have the Holy Ghost, they believe it. Here we try to rationalize everything. We try to figure it all out, before it happens. Well, how is this going to happen? They said there, they just believe it. And that's the way these heroes of faith, when God said something, they just took him at his word. And they just believed that whatever he said was going to happen. So they responded to whatever God called them to do. Through faith, verse 3, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. If you look at this world, this earth, and all of its beauty, it was made out of nothing. That's what Paul's saying here. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. God said, let there be, and whatever he said, let there be, it just appeared. He made it out of nothing. It happened just as he spoke it into existence. Now, how do we know this? It's through faith that we believe the word of God. It's by faith that we believe the biblical account of creation. That when God spoke it, it happened. He spoke things out of nothing, and things appeared. It's by faith that we believe that. Beginning in verse 4, Paul begins naming the heroes of faith. The first one, he says in verse 4, by faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. Now, what do we know about Abel? He was the second son of Adam and Eve. He was a shepherd. That's about it. Not really a whole lot that we know about him. We know that he brought a sacrifice to the Lord. He came to worship the Lord. He brought a sacrifice, and it was pleasing to the Lord. Now, I've often wondered, Cain brought a sacrifice to the Lord. He brought stuff that he had. He brought vegetables or plants or whatever it was he had. That's because he was a farmer. He was a tiller of the ground. He brought what he had to sacrifice to the Lord. Now, up until that time, I don't see anywhere that God said you got to bring a blood sacrifice. Evidently, it had been, or maybe it was just the attitude in which that Cain and Abel brought their sacrifices. Abel brought a sacrifice, a more excellent sacrifice. Maybe it was the condition, the attitude of his heart. He came worshiping. Maybe Cain just said, hey, if he's going to do something, I will too. And he just grabbed up something as he was going on his way and said, here it is, Lord, here, But the Lord did not accept his sacrifice. Evidently, Abel trusted and had confidence in God. And because of that, he's listed here, the heroes of faith. Verse 5, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony that he pleased God. Enoch walked with God. Enoch pleased God. And so the Lord, just as I've heard it said before, they was walking one day, and the Lord said, well, it's just closer to my house than it is yours, so why don't you just come on home with me? And, you know, just gone. I don't know what Enoch's family did. He just went out one day walking with the Lord, and he didn't come back. But somebody knew where he went. He was not, because God just took him. By faith, Noah, verse 7, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. He said, by faith being warned of God of things not seen as yet. You know what he's talking about here? God came and told Noah something's going to happen that's never happened before. He said water's going to fall out of the sky. That had never happened before. And there's going to be so much water that's coming down that everything's going to get flooded. The water's going to rise. There's going to be a flood. Noah probably didn't even understand all that was going on, because he had never seen it. The Lord was telling him about things that had never been seen. So Noah just took the Lord at his word. He said, I don't know what rain is. I don't know what a flood is, but here the Lord has told me I need to build a boat if I'm going to save my family. And he moved with fear, because of the fear, the confidence that he had in the Lord and what he would say, and because of the fear of what the Lord said was going to happen, he began building an ark to save his family. But I think it was more than just fear that motivated Noah. I think it was faith in God and in his word that caused him to do this. He said, if God said it, it's going to happen. I may not understand it. I may not know what all is going to happen, but if he said it's going to happen, then I better get busy and just do what he told me to do. Genesis 6, verse 5 says, and God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. Verse 8 says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah lived in a time much like today. According to Jesus, as it would be in the time of his coming as it was in the days of Noah. And certainly I believe that we're living in that time. So Noah lived in a time like we live in today, and evil was all around him, but yet there was something about the way that Noah lived. When the Lord decided to destroy life from the earth, he looked down and he said, wait a minute, there's a man right there that's worthy of saving. And he found grace. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and because of his faith that he moved and he did what the Lord said, and his family was spared because he obeyed God. Verse 8 says, by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed and went out, not knowing whither he went. You know what that means? The Lord told Abraham, said, I want you to follow me. Abraham said, where we're going? He said, it don't matter, you just follow me. He didn't know where he was going. By faith, he did that. And I don't know how many of you would get in the car with somebody and they said, come on, let's go. Where we're going? Well, I'll tell you when we get there. You know, I don't really want to do that. Now, I did that one time. Cindy, back a few years ago, she said, you be ready. We're going somewhere. I said, well, how you want me to dress? She told me. And she got in the car. She drove, which she never drives with me in the car, even if I want her to. I mean, most of the time I don't want her to. I mean, I'll do it. But she said, I'm driving. And we took off, and I kept thinking, where are we going? And we'd make a turn. I think I'd had it figured out, and she'd make a turn and said, no, it can't be there. And we drove, and we ended up at a Southern gospel singing. I was so happy. Because I never drive. I thought we was going somewhere to eat. We pulled up at a church, and I saw buses and and Southern gospel singers there, and I was in heaven. You know, that was just wonderful. But, you know, I'm just not, you pull up and ask me to say, let's go somewhere. I want to know where you're going. But the Lord came and called on Abraham. He said, I want you to leave where you are, and I'm going to show you where you're going to go, but I'm not going to tell you. You just follow me. And said, by faith, when he was called out to go into a place which he should have to receive for inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing where he was going. Genesis 12:1 says, now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house into a land that I'll show you. And I'll make of thee a great nation, and I'll bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you, and curse them that curseth you. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So the Lord said, come on, I'm going to show you, and I'm making you some promises that if you'll follow me, I'm going to bless you. Things are going to be good if you'll just follow me. So verse 4 of Genesis 12 says, so Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him. He just said, okay, Lord, if you're going to take me somewhere, I'll go with you. And so by faith, he did that. Verse 9, back to Hebrews 11, by faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. He took his family with him. He took his children with him. And he was looking for a place. Not on this earth. He was really looking for something heavenly. We'll talk about that later. Now the next verse, verse 11, we come to the first of two women that are mentioned in this hall of heroes of faith. Verse 11 says, through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. This story of the life of Sarah is almost unbelievable. And when the first time, I think when the Lord came and told Abraham, you're going to have a son, Sarah laughed. She said, I don't think so. I'm an old lady and he's an old man. I don't think that's going to happen. And of course, the Lord said something about her laughing. And now so then she, no, I didn't laugh. But there was something about it. Evidently, she did have faith in the word of the Lord. And it gave her hope and the strength to carry on. And because she believed the one that had promised that he was able to deliver on that promise. Read that verse 11 again. She said, because she judged him faithful who had promised. She said, now this Lord, this God that came and talked to Abraham, I know a little bit about him. And if he says something, it's going to come to pass. So she believed that he was faithful, the one that made the promise. So she just took him at his word. And then one day there came the time that she gave birth to a child when she was too old to have a baby. Abraham was too old to have children. Sarah was too old to have children, yet they had children. And Abraham had children after this. We don't talk about that much. But even after that, he had more children. Verse 13 says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. There were some things that was told in the Old Testament, some prophecies that these people believed, yet they never saw the fulfillment of that promise. They never saw the end of what the Lord had promised them. Yet they died still believing that what he said was going to happen would eventually happen. Verse 15 says, and truly if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had the opportunity to have returned. You look at the children of Israel, when they were delivered from Egypt, there was many times that some of them wanted to go back. And that's what he's taught. He said some of these, and that maybe even Abraham, there may have been times he thought, I just think I'll go back to the land of Ur, and I'll just settle down there. Maybe things will be better. But he was not looking for a place here on this earth. But now they desire a better country, that is an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. They understood that the Lord had made some promises. They walked through this life believing God, following God, having faith in him, but they also understood that the promise that he had given them was still to come. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. We used to sing a song, if anybody asks you where I'm going up yonder. Going up yonder. The other song says, I'm going to a city. I'm going somewhere. It's not going to be to Colbert or to Hull or to Athens or to Chicago. We're going to a heavenly place. We're going somewhere. Then in verse 17, he says, by faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from whence he also received him in a figure. The Lord told Abraham, said, you take your son, your only son, Isaac, and you go and you offer him as a sacrifice. Abraham was fully prepared to do that. He took his son, he took his servants, and they traveled. They got to the bottom of the mountain. Abraham told his servants, y'all stay here. Me and the boy, we're going to go worship, and we will return. Here Paul is saying in 19, he said he understood that he was going to sacrifice it, but he understood that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence he also received him in a figure. He was talking about his own body. He said my body was dead, and yet he was born. He said, so it's not going to be a hard thing for God to raise him from the dead. He believed God. He had faith in God. And of course, he was fully prepared to kill him, but he fully trusted in God that either he was going to resurrect Isaac, or before it happened, there was going to be a substitute. There was something that God was going to provide, a sacrifice. Isaac said, I see the wood, I see the fire, but where is the sacrifice? And Abraham said, God will provide himself a sacrifice. And of course, he was also prophetically speaking of the day that the Lord would come and give himself as a sacrifice. The death of Isaac would have contradicted every promise that God had made to Abraham. If he had killed him and that was the end of it, all the things that the Lord had told him would have been a lie. How could the seed come through Isaac if he was dead? So everything, it just could not have happened if that was the end of Isaac. So God, Abraham believed God. He had faith in him to know and understand that if God had told him these things, it was going to happen. So I don't think he hesitated. He put him on the altar. He took the knife back. He was ready to kill him. And then the voice said, do your son no harm. Just leave him alone there. Everything's fine. I see that you're not going to withhold your son, your only son, from me. So his willingness to sacrifice Isaac may have been one of the greatest demonstrations of faith that's in the entire Bible. I don't know, how they did these things. How could you take your only child and you say, okay, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna burn him, and I don't understand all that, but he understood that God was in control. Then verse 20 says, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. The promises that God had made to Abraham were passed on to Isaac. Isaac trusted the Lord. And because of his faith, he followed the Lord just like his father Abraham did. And then Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was included in the heroes of faith. Esau was not. At the beginning of Jacob, even his name means deceiver or supplanter. He was always out for himself. What can I get? What can I do? He lied. He stole. He got things that, even he got Esau's birthright. Of course, Esau was to blame from that because he didn't protect it and didn't value it as he should. But even after all of this, he was included in the heroes of faith. And there was something that happened that changed Jacob's life. And it was after he had an encounter with the Lord, and it was an all-night wrestling match, that the Lord changed his name from Jacob to Israel. He said, because thou hast power with God as a prince. And so it was there that Jacob, he had been a supplanter, he had been a deceiver, all of these things that he had been, but yet when he came in contact with the Lord, it changed his life. It changed the way he thought. It even changed the way he walked. The Lord touched the hollow of his thigh, and from then on there was a limp there, and he didn't walk the same. I heard a message many years ago, and I don't remember all about it, but that was things said when Jacob come walking up and his family saw him coming, they said, well, that looks like Daddy, but he ain't walking like Daddy. He walked different because he came in touch with the Lord. By faith, he walked with God, and he was blessed with 12 sons who became the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel. And then in verse 21 it says, by faith Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshiped, leaning upon the top of his staff. After he came in touch with God, and I guess from that day on, he had to walk with a staff because he had a limp. There was a problem there in the way he walked. But even when he was about ready to die, he leaned on that staff, and he blessed the sons of Joseph. And then by faith, verse 22, when Joseph got ready to die, he made mention of the departing of the children of Israel and gave commandment concerning his bones. Now, Paul doesn't go into much detail on any of these. He talks about Abraham and Moses more than he does any of the rest of these heroes of faith. But we understand the life of Joseph. We know how that he trusted the Lord, and how that through adversity the Lord used his life to save his people. And when it got time for Joseph to die, he knew that God's people were not to be in Egypt. That's where they all ended up, and that's where he was sold to, and the family came there. But he said one day the Lord has promised that we've got a promised land, and Egypt is not it. Canaan is where we're supposed to be. And even though he had lived most of his life there in Egypt, and he was a very prominent figure there. He had wealth and all the things that went with his position. Yet when he got ready to die, he said, listen, boys, one day God's going to move us out of here. He said, and when you go, don't leave my bones in Egypt. I'm not supposed to be here. We're supposed to be in the promised land. And by faith, he said, God is going to do what he said he would do. God gave that land to my, I don't know if it was a great-granddaddy Abraham or great-great-granddaddy. He said God promised Abraham that we would have that promised land, that land of Canaan, and that we would be a big family, a huge a people, so many that would be as the stars of the sky or the sea of the shore. He says, so we're not meant to be here. And so when you get ready to go, you make sure you take me with you. Because I don't want to be left here when all of God's people's in the promised land. And I'm going to stop right there. But there's a message in that. When God's people leave this place, I don't want to be here. If I'm in the ground, I hope that trumpet wakes me up. Because I want to go when God's people go, wherever they go, because he has promised us a better land. And it's going to be better than Canaan. We sing that song, I'm living in Canaan land. Well, Canaan land wasn't heaven. Canaan land was just better than what they had where they were. Canaan land, they had come out of Egypt, a place of bondage, and they'd been set free, but it wasn't heaven. We sing, I'm on my way to Canaan land, and that's really not where we're going. If we got the Holy Ghost and we're living in the freedom of the Spirit, we're in Canaan land. We're going to heaven. We're looking for a city whose builder and maker is God, just like these people were. Anybody got any questions or anything to say on this so far? Hope you got something out of it. I don't know, I woke up Monday morning with this on my mind. There is something, and I may say this again, you can't make somebody be faithful. You can't make somebody have faith. I can't make you come to church. God can't make you come to church. Now, God can make you wish you had gone. I can't save you, and God won't make you be saved. But if you don't get saved, you're going to wish you were. But these people, they did what they did because they believed God. They took him at his word. They had faith in him. And that's what we need to do. People of faith, I believe, are faithful. And God is looking for faithful people. The parables that Jesus taught, when it came to the end, he said, well done, thy good and faithful servant. He didn't say, well done, thy good and perfect servant. He didn't say, well done, thy servant that did a lot of good things. He said, you've been faithful. And in his parable, he said, you've been faithful over a few things, so I'm going to make you ruler over many things.